I'm Isaac Cinnamon.
And I'm Carlos Grace, and we're Christians in Cinema.
If you're new here, this is the show where we bring faith and film together and look at cinema through the lens of Jesus and His Word.
Because as Christ-following filmmakers, we believe God speaks to us through stories, and we're here to listen.
And if you've been here before,
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Yes.
It is April now.
Beginning of April.
Moving into the springtime. The clouds are parting and the birds are singing.
The flowers are blooming.
The pollen is everywhere.
The snakes are slithering.
Yeah.
Whole thing.
Saw a snake yesterday outside our dorm. That was fun.
Yeah.
He was just a little guy.
Little dude.
Yes, we're in a new quarter now at SCAD. And we talked about it a little last episode. We were supposed to have an episode in between this and Inside Out, but our plans changed. Seems to be a theme of that this past season.
Yes.
I don't want to go too deep into it, but I feel like we should talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. So we were going to originally do Seven, directed by David Fincher. And if you saw Inside Out, you saw there was a portion that we cut out and that we replaced in with Future Us, which is also now Past Us. We're not going to get into it. Talking about that, we're going to do Wildcat now. We recorded Seven, we watched the movie, we recorded it, and we went to class, and we realized the audio was terrible.
Yeah. So there was that, and that was a moment where we were like, all right, what's God saying to us through here? Also, coming into this quarter, just a complete kind of turnaround from what we had expected, because Carlos and I forget if we mentioned it on the podcast, but we have been working on a short film for the past several months now, writing it, pre-production, getting everything ready, and the plan was to go ahead and shoot it this quarter as a part of a class, and then circumstances out of our control happened. Not everyone could be here, and all of a sudden the main focus of this quarter that we were like gearing in, locking in to do, just kind of blew up and was like, all right, we're going to have to wait at the very least if, coming back to it. And so that's definitely been like, wow, okay, God, this is not the season I thought it was. What are you doing? What are we meant to do in this season? And just kind of submitting that. We're going to talk a bit today about what happens when we get thrown off the course we thought we were on through our film. But how's your quarter been so far, Carlos?
It's good. I mean, it's pretty, this is the second week, but it's been good classes, a lot of storytelling. I got 2 classes about stories and writing about stories. Design 3, so it's been good. It's been chill so far.
Yeah.
What about you?
That's good. It's been all right. Had to drop a class, add a class, and just trying to come to God and see what He's doing through this season. Yeah. But we've got a lot to get into today, so without further ado, let's hit our quick story recap. Carlos, what movie are we watching today?
We are watching Wildcat, directed by Ethan Hawke, starring Maya Hawke, his daughter, as Flannery O'Connor, a Catholic author back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And it's about her life.
All of those times.
All of those times she was writing books and stuff and stories.
Yes. It's based off true story, based off a true author. Kind of a biopic, but kind of not.
Creative one for sure.
Definitely creative. Yes, like you said, Catholic author, diagnosed with lupus. She was actually based in Savannah for a while when she grew up in Savannah. She went off to New York to start writing, and then she came back to Milledgeville in Georgia, where she spent the rest of her life because of her sickness, and she died in 1964. So she spent 15 years at home with this sickness. Yeah. And then, of course, you have the stories she was telling, which not very conventional from the sounds of it and the looks of it.
Very, trying to reveal truth in a society that doesn't always want to hear it. And for her, she was constantly debating of whether this is good or not. I mean, she thought her works were scandalous. And not because she was doing it just to be scandalous, maybe, or maybe her ego would say that she was, but because she wanted to explore something that hadn't been explored before. Like she says to the publisher in the beginning, like, are you ready to produce an unconventional novel?
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. You have like this commentary in the movie from her parents or parent figures where it's like, why don't you write something like Gone with the Wind? You know, that's
we need another good book like that one.
Yeah, put a war in it. That always makes it longer.
Yeah.
She was writing and making things that probably today would be considered like, you know, the artsy type films that are uncomfortable, but maybe are trying to communicate something to you.
Yeah.
And then it ends with her at home, still writing as she spends the rest of her life doing there, which she actually did.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of the story. There's a lot to go into it because her faith plays a lot into her storytelling and her life, and I'm really surprised at how much it went into that. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. Without further ado, let's get into our first impressions.
I think we should say without further ado for every single category. Carlos, what did you think when you first saw this? Where did you first see this?
Well, I saw it with you and our friend in SCAD. They were premiering it in SCAD last year at the end of spring quarter, I think in May. And the big thing also was that Ethan Hawke was coming, the director, who's done also a lot of other films in Hollywood.
Who's an actor.
Yes, an actor. And we were like, oh, so excited, he's coming. And then they surprised us, and Maya Hawke was there too.
Yes.
Who you might know from Stranger Things and all this stuff.
Inside Out 2, we just talked about.
We talked about. She's the main actress of this film, so it was really cool they came to speak to us afterwards.
Yeah, oh my gosh, and so well spoken.
Yeah.
So well spoken.
Yeah.
But the movie.
Yeah, the movie, I really enjoyed. It's definitely one that I think you need to watch again to kind of like, you know, see, do you like it as much as the first time, but also just like it's so complex in the way it like tells its story. I think it's one that you need to rewatch to see where Flannery's touches are, right? Like where she's in it.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. And yeah, what about you?
Yeah, like you said, saw it last year. This was my second time watching it for the podcast. And I was wondering, I was telling you, I was like, you know, we got to see this knowing that Ethan Hawke and Maya Hawke were there. Yeah. So it was already really exciting, and I wondered, is this going to hold up? Was I just starstruck? And at first I was thinking like, yeah, maybe that was some of it. But then once it got into like the meat and the heart of the movie, I was like, no, this is something special. This is a special thing that I think specifically really hits our heartstrings because we are creatives and because we are Christians who are exploring how to honor, glorify God through our work. And this movie explores a lot of that. And it was so interesting hearing Maya and Ethan talk about it because neither of them are religious, if I'm correct in saying that. I know you've heard them talk a bit.
Yeah, I think Ethan was raised in Christianity, but obviously I don't know if that's something he's still interested in. I think he mentioned when he was here talking about spirituality, and I did watch a video with him, like I said, and he talked about like how he thinks organized religion is good because it gives you like a structure into the divine, basically. So yeah. Yeah,
but I was just so surprised, and I think it just speaks to how well they honored Flannery's life and the things she wrote about, that there was so much God in this movie. Like sometimes we're really having to pull up the microscope to see where God is in a movie, but here it is all over.
Yeah.
And it just spoke a lot of truth that I'm excited to get into. And I really love it. It's on my wall. It's one of my newest additions to the wall because I think there was something really special here. And it was special to get to see it knowing they were there.
Yeah.
Like that's something I'm going to hold on to.
Yeah.
We actually, while we were there, they were selling some of her books, some of her work and each of the three of us who saw it, we each bought a book. And you got her prayer journal,
Yes,
which a lot of the lines in the movie are from, and I got her journal of letters that she would send, which a lot of the movie context came from. And then our third friend got her actual short stories. So,
which a lot of the film is comprised of, is seeing her short stories play out.
Yeah, they were really true to the source material.
Yeah, which is great. And her childhood home is here in Savannah, which you can visit as a museum.
Yeah, there's like a museum.
It's very cool.
Heck yeah. Well, without further ado, let's get into our main takes.
Main takes. All right. There's a lot here, but they're all good. Can you introduce us to the first one?
Yeah, a big chunk of this movie, we've already started talking about it, but it's about creativity, and specifically creativity for the Lord, and how to approach that. Because like we said, her works for a long time were critiqued, not because she was a bad writer. I mean, she was still learning and growing, but it was because that her stories didn't give you the fuzzy ending or the fuzzy feeling.
Yeah.
You kind of described them in a certain way that made sense.
I don't know if I remember what I said, but they're unconventional. They're uncomfortable. They try and tell some sort of truth that maybe the people don't want to hear, right? And it's like even her own mom is like, don't you want to write something that people would like really like, like a lot of people would like? She's like, that's not what I'm trying to do here. Even the publisher is editing and changing things based off how the rest of the world would like it, and she's like, look, I'm here to make an unconventional novel, and the question is, are you ready to publish that kind of content?
Yeah, which seems like a dramatization for the movie, and the dramatization was that they actually had that conversation, but I read those words word for word in her letters as she was writing to the publisher, saying the question is not like, the question is, are you ready to publish a new kind of novel?
Yeah. So
even at a young age, she was very confident in what she was writing, even though at the same time she was conflicted about it.
Because great art doesn't have to be like something that just makes you feel good all the time, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I like when it makes me feel good.
Sure.
And sometimes those are the things I prefer,
and there's room for that too. But don't get me wrong.
Yeah, there's also the things that I've seen that stick with me that leave the question and leave the uneasy feeling sometimes. And I think what I remember you describing it as them kind of being like the Grimm's fairy tales.
Oh yes, yeah. They were like, they had fairy tales originally. It weren't like the Disney ones where it's all happy and the prince gets the princess and whatever. It was, this is a dark story to tell a moral lesson, right? It was made for adults, essentially.
Goldilocks gets eaten.
And just all that goes to show in that particular time in society, it's supposed to reveal something about the people and about the issues in society. We're not saying that Flannery was perfect and that she had everything figured out,
right?
But I think she was trying to tap into that of like, I don't want to just make fiction. I want to make impactful fiction.
Right. Which it talks about in here, and we'll talk about more. But the movie opens up with a quote that basically says, some people see fiction as an escape from reality when it's actually a plunge into reality, which I definitely agree with. I've never felt like I need to go to the movies to escape. And that's literally what we do through this podcast is we take these pieces of entertainment or pieces of art and we're like, all right, where do we draw reality out of this? And some of her stories that we got to see from the movie, really tackling some challenging ideas. There's a story that really sticks out to me where you have the door-to-door salesman who's selling Bibles, and he's, presents himself as this good old country boy and this kind of false sense of security. And then the main character girl falls for him, and they have a little bit of a romance, and then he shows his true colors, and he abandons her and leaves her, in a bad place. And the thing is, she's critiquing that in herself. She's really looking at herself and saying, what part of me, and around her, because she's around, religious type country folk,
good old folk,
who see the world a certain way. And she's like looking at that and being, not doing the Christians are the good guy, the atheists are the bad guy, but really being like, where do I stumble in this, and the things I hate about like religion and that false righteousness kind of thing.
Absolutely. I mean, like even like what we see with Parker's backstory, where he gets a tattoo and marries her, and it's about Jesus, and in that moment where she could be graceful towards him, and I think he's trying to find grace, right? And I mean, his name is literally servant of God, and instead she like smacks him, Obadiah Lehu, Parker, and instead she smacks him with the broom, and he's scraped, and Jesus's face is there with the blood coming down. It's very symbolic of that need for grace.
Is that from Wise Blood? Was that what she was reading, or is that a different story?
No, that one's literally called Parker's Back.
Okay.
Yeah. And so like just we see in her like Maya Hawke inhabits the characters that I'm assuming maybe the filmmakers believe that's what Flannery was finding herself into, that sometimes she would get in this bubble of herself. And so it's very interesting how she represents that in her short stories and her novels.
Yeah, definitely. And you see her conflict with that, especially when she's at like the lowest point in the movie. She's just fallen down the stairs, and the priest, played by Liam Neeson, comes in and has this really cool conversation with her. And she's just talking like, my stories are scandalous, and I don't know what I'm doing, and like I want to do right by God. She even asks like, how do I be a good Catholic? Which, it's kind of funny, but it is like a real sort of cry out that we have. It's like,
we want to do good in our...
What am I meant to do here? Because I have these ideas and stories in me, but...
And desires, right?
But
to be great.
Yeah, like, are these things actually for you? Or are they just for me? And how to navigate that.
Right, yeah. And he tells to her, do you write truthfully? And is your conscience clear? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, then write, and God will take care of the rest. And it's like, I think you mentioned it with me earlier, it's like we get so much in our heads and we like to overthink, and it's like, if you're doing it truthfully and your conscience is clear and you're not being convicted by it, then write. And let God do with it what he's going to do with it.
Yeah, because if we don't do that, as Christian creatives, if we're trying to plan out, we're really trying to play God in being like, I have to write this in a way that, like, at this point, this person's going to be led to Jesus, kind of thing. And that is not in our power or jurisdiction or control, and not what God calls us to do. He calls us to write or to speak and be in truth. Yeah. And to align that with him. And sometimes what we write, maybe it might not be the right thing, but he needs us to write that so we can see what's actually in us. It's an expression of ourselves. And maybe the dialogue I write for a character, it's like, oh my gosh, that's in me somewhere. Even though it's not me, that came out of me.
And even if it's imperfect, because it's going to be, God can still use it for his glory, because now you're revealing stuff about yourself, but you're also revealing to others, this is also who I am. Like, you don't have to be afraid to come to God, because he still will come to you. You know what I mean?
Like, when I was in my story class, the teacher was telling me that a lot of authors, when you ask them about theme, they don't like to talk about it, because for them, plot is what I put into it and the characters are what I put into it, and theme is what the reader pulls out of it, or the audience. And like when I'm reading Harry Potter, my, like, going through it, my worldview doesn't become like Harry Potter is the true, like, chosen one of the world. But what I'm pulling from it are these themes of sacrifice and these themes of love that surpasses death. And I don't know how much of that was intentional. I mean, obviously. But like J.K. Rowling, she wasn't necessarily deliberately being like, and at this point, Isaac is going to feel X, Y, and Z. Because that's what I pull out of it.
Yeah.
And I think as creatives, we really try to overthink, especially as Christian creatives. We get very
overthinking what we're going to do. I mean, sorry for bringing up Lord of the Rings, but Tolkien even said when he wrote it, he's like, I wrote it and it was religious and Christian, and it was unconscious at first. Like, I was just writing a story, and it became that because, like you said, that's what's in you.
Right.
So you have to trust that it's going to come out.
The same way we watch, like, movies and media and read things, and just naturally what we see in there is God. It's not because that was the original intention, but that's what we see. It's the same thing when we create, is that something comes out of us, and it's like, oh, I see God there, so I'm going to lean into that even more. Right.
It comes up as you're doing it, right? You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And God is not a confusing God. Like, God is not the author of confusion. He is going to tell you when it's wrong. He's going to say, hey, I'm going to shut that door because that's not okay.
And our defensiveness wants to be like, I want to know this before I write it. Like, I want to know this is going to be the wrong thing, or before I do it, like anything. I'm saying writing right now because she's a writer and like we write stuff.
Sure.
But just with any sort of decision making of like, God, what's the exact right words? You know, God tells us like the Spirit will give you the words in the moment. Don't worry about what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Because if you're truly in Him, He wants your focus to be on Him and your relationship with Him. And if that is coming second to, but God, what do I write here? Like, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a good way to put it, but it's like...
I mean, it's supposed to point up to Him. It shouldn't point back to itself, essentially.
But, and it's like, He is the source that, like, charges you up with Him.
Right.
So that when you go out and do stuff, He naturally comes out.
Right.
Versus, you know, not going to the source, but trying to glorify Him through our own human power.
I mean, she says writing without you is dead. You know, let me be your typewriter.
So good. So good. Yeah, I love that line. Lord, make me your typewriter. That's the prayer that we should be praying, that as a Christ follower, we should be praying is, Lord, make me your typewriter. Lord, you know, work through me and let the words flow through me.
No matter what industry or career you have,
like,
always work through
let me be the medium for your work, kind of thing.
Yeah. You're the canvas, right?
Yes. There's a lot of that, and I really, like, I want to do a deeper dive even just into her short stories, which reading a little bit of, like, it's very Southern talk, and the way she does dialogue, she really lets you know how these people talk in a very Southern way. Yeah. But I think the movie did a really good job of capturing just the kind of the harshness, but the reality and life that her stories had. And I want to see more of that. And it's a question for us too of, like, part of this podcast is saying, God, what stories do you want us to tell? Yeah. And sometimes I feel like there's a clear answer, like, here's the story I need you to tell, or here's the type of story I need you to tell. Yeah. But other times it's like, I don't know, God, if this is of you at all, but I had this idea for this, like, kind of dark thing, this uncomfortable thing, and, like, submitting that to Him, but also trusting that, like, He's put in you talents and He's put in you abilities, and maybe you need to see that out to see how He's going to work through it. Yeah. You know, absolutely. It's the instinct to be like, I want to have a plan and I want to know how this is going to end up and come off
before I do it.
Before I get into
And I mean, our example of having 7 and we did it all, and then it was that we saw the audio wasn't working. So sometimes you do it and then it's like, no.
Right. And it's not like we were deliberately, like, ignoring God. I mean, maybe He was talking to us before, but there wasn't a clear shut-off point until we had already filmed it. Yeah. And we had to step back and say, okay, well, are we going to trust God here? Right. Or are we going to try to, like, brute force do this again?
Yeah. I wouldn't consider that lost time either. Right. That's not like, oh, we lost an hour and a half.
We had a great conversation.
We did have a great conversation.
You didn't get to hear it, but we lifted each other up.
And it helped us. It edified us as well of, like, okay, because we have touched on dark stories before, like Taxi Driver and Oppenheimer. Yeah. So it's not like God is against showing these things. It's just like God knows exactly what we need and what you need. And so we're just grateful that he's like our manager. He's like the guy who's like, nope, we're not doing that.
Yeah, and he has infinite wisdom to know that, like, when you need to do something and fail to learn something, other than, hey, don't touch that, and then just, not actually learning out of that.
Sure.
So I love her heart for the Lord, and I love her truthfulness in saying, like, I don't know if these stories I tell or these stories are actually glorifying God, but all I know is what is in me, and he is in me, and so that's all I can go off of, is in trusting that.
And with a lot of that, there's crying out to God multiple times. I mean, like we said, Flannery was kind of in a rough spot, not only with her lupus diagnosis, but also with the fact that she didn't know if her stories were what was going to glorify God. Was she doing it for herself, or was she doing it for him?
I mean, they weren't successful commercially.
Yeah. At least not at first, right?
Right. They weren't being enjoyed by anyone. People multiple times said, why don't you write something that people want to read?
A lot of people
want to read.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine, like, she was very young at the time, like 25, when she was diagnosed, and just all of a sudden, what she thought she was going to do of, like, moving to New York and being a writer was completely thrown off, and all of a sudden she's stuck at home for 15 years, slowly dying.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. And she's real, and I think those cry out to God is also why her stories are impactful. It's because, again, with like Parker's back, like he's trying to reach out to her, right, for grace. And I think she's trying to reach out for grace through her stories. And she's complicated because she's very truthful, not only with the world around her, but with herself, and that she knows her own ego, and she knows herself, and she knows, like, man, like, am I doing this for a good reason, or am I doing it for a bad reason? Like, I want to be a great writer, but is that because God is giving me that desire? Because I want to be famous, and I want to be popular among people.
Yeah. And she comes to God and says, God, I genuinely believe that I want this both for good and for bad.
Yeah.
And to, like, please help guide me in that. And that you hear her outcry and her prayers. Like, I would also love to read her prayer journal, because I think that's just really cool to see someone else in the faith's relationship with God, and how she talks to him. And also just for more of those real moments of outcry. You have a lot of moments in the Bible of outcry, and how those are the moments where you're really able to reach out to God, and he hears the cries in the wilderness.
Yeah, I mean, literally going through, like, Judges right now, and, like, the Israelites mess up something, they get, like, enslaved by people, and then they cry out to God, and then God rescues them, and then they do the same thing. They abandon God to serve other gods. And so, but you see through all that God's steadfastness and faithfulness of even when they mess up and they get hurt, when they cry out, God's there to deliver them.
Yeah, we never lead with the outcry for some reason.
Yeah.
Because when things are good enough, or when we're back in our comfort of alleged control, supposed control, then, like, we feel no need to cry out.
Right.
And then we're like, where is God in my life? And it's like, well, are you crying out to him?
Right. Which is what this, like, period of Lent is too, is you're giving up your comfort, right, in the things that you go back into so that you feel steady. And you're instead crying out to God of, like, this is hard, and I can't always do it without your help. And so, God's got a lot of grace, and always cry out. Always cry out. Don't feel like you're too far gone for God to come rescue you. Yeah,
I love that. And her faith is a beautiful thing. And again, I'm a little in awe of how truthful these secular filmmakers were to her life, and really emphasizing it. I mean, if you've seen the movie, you know that it is the forefront of her inner conflict, and her purpose is her faith. And I love her crying out to God. I also really, like we talked about, love the crying out scene with the priest, where she doesn't have this super close connection with him,
Mm-hmm.
but she's just honest and real of like, I write and I'm dying and I don't know what God has for me, and I just completely lost.
Yeah.
Like, I get really flustered and struggle when like I'm healthy and when I can't see what's ahead of me.
Yeah.
And I know that in those moments where I've never been sick like that, but when you're really sick and you're like, I took my health for granted, it makes any sort of like thinking and praying that much harder to get to, because it's like, I'm also just like, I don't have the energy and life in me to
continue
to bring that forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, heck, I even, like, when I did my wisdom teeth surgery and I had that infection, and it was kind of, like, painful, especially, like, in the ears. And I was like, there were times where I was, like, getting angry with God. I was like, God, I don't, want this, and, like, why am I going through this and whatnot? And so it was a very challenging thing to continue to praise and rejoice in God even when you're feeling terrible. And so I can only imagine, Flannery O'Connor for 14 years or so doing that.
Yeah.
And crazy.
Maybe I wonder how true this was to real life, but it didn't seem like she had a lot of people to like support her either in her faith. Like, she has her mom. I think that's her mom, right?
I think so. She just calls her Regina.
Yeah. She has Regina, who is there for her, but she always seems to have something negative to say. To criticize her work, how she approaches life, when she's the one that's like dying of lupus. And so I feel like she is like such a role model in the fact that she was so strengthened by all of these things that were weakening her, and God strengthened her and strengthened in her. And we'll get to more of that later. But I want to talk, continuing down this train, about like tragedy versus prosperity. Because she is struck with this pain, and she is surrounded with people like Regina and neighbors who have a different perspective and thought on their relationship with God and how they go about life and how God blesses them.
I think it was a quote that we thought of is when she's at the writer's party, I think it was, and they're talking about religion and the Eucharist and what it means and all that. And there's definitely some people who are skeptical of religion, and she's like, people think religion is like a heated blanket, right? But in reality, it's the cross. It's like, we think that religion, I think we've mentioned this on the podcast before, it's like a crutch, right? And it's because it's like, we want to have a fairy tale ending. If you look at the original fairy tales, they were dark, okay? And this world is dark. And the Bible shows some very dark things, like extremely dark. And so it's the cross. It's the deny yourself. It's follow after me, no matter what it means. I mean, all the apostles, the original apostles died, were martyred, were killed, except for John. So it's not like Jesus comes around, it's like, hey, everything's going to be easy now. It's, hey, this life is hard, but I'm worth it. And the rewards you get is worth it for following after me.
And don't get me wrong, like there's blessing along the way, and
absolutely,
you appreciate it all the more when you know the source of it. But that's not to say that all of life is like that, is that comfortable. And you see people in Flannery's world that seem to be like, well, if God was really using this talent in you, like, wouldn't a lot of people be reading your book? Or you have this really strange, interesting scene with one of the people in the waiting room. I don't remember.
One of the short
name.
Stories?
Maybe, but I couldn't tell. This is the line of the movie where like I couldn't tell how much was short story and how much was just how she saw the world. But one of the women had like this idea of what Jesus looked like and how Jesus like approached her, and like categories Jesus put people in, and it is a very strange part. But also at the same time, it kind of leaned into this idea that there's this prosperity gospel idea, which is false. That if God really loves you, or if you are doing right by God, then he is going to do right by you, and he is going to give you a blessed life that is easy and is enjoyable. And I just warn you, like, in giving advice to struggling brothers and sisters in Christ, that the answer, I mean, it depends on the situation, but rarely is the answer like you're dealing with depression, you're dealing with this hard stuff because you have done something apart from God, or you've, like, this is the punishment you deserve.
Yeah.
Were we talking about something the other day where it was like there was some punishment that was happening to someone and people thought that's what they... Yeah, okay, I remember. I was having a conversation with someone whose dad got in an accident and had to be airlifted to the hospital, and then the church they went to told him that was God's punishment for that dad, that he got, like, hit by a car. And it's a very transactional relationship with God that is not truth and not true to the Bible, that when you do good, God gives you good, and when you do bad, God gives you bad. And so please do good so you can earn good, and not the truth that is you can't do good, yet God gives you good.
Right.
And
that's what grace is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, obviously, if you do something wrong, there's obviously consequences, but it's not like God is now out to get you and you're just like, you know. And so grace is a free gift. Grace is not earned. It's given out of love, which is what God calls us to do when we've been given grace, because we know what that's like now, to be forgiven. And so, yeah, it's not as black and white, I think, as we like to make it, because I think we like those kind of boundaries sometimes.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there's times where people mess up in the Bible and God does punish them, but it's not like that's always the case, and God's always inviting you to come back. Like, the Israelites get enslaved, but he always, when they cry out, he always delivers them, and he always saves them.
And it's also, we've talked about it before, but it's less a matter of you do wrong, God sends lightning bolt. It's more a matter of God saying, hey, like, don't pull that stone. And then you pull the stone, and then the wall falls down, and, like, the flood comes on. Like, it's not a retaliation of God.
Yeah.
It is God's, like, warning and saying, hey, like, this is how it is, and if you do this, like, this is where your life's gonna go.
Yeah.
And then us following through, and then what do you know? That's how life's gonna go.
Right.
You see that also, because also reading through, like, Judges, the end of the Torah, and God telling Israel about blessings and curses, like, he's giving them a law of the land of, like, if you follow my words, if you are dedicated to me, if you love me with all that you are and live for me, you will be blessed, and there will be blessing just because of the nature of how I've created you. Like, I'm telling you how I created you and how the ideal way for you to live. But he also warns, like, if you don't follow this, I'm warning you, like, these are the things that await for you. And he's kind enough to give us that, like, foresight into what might happen.
Yeah. And so a big thing, too, is truth. What is the truth? I'm sure Flannery would say Jesus, right? The way, the truth, and the life.
And can you handle it?
And can you handle the truth? Truth is interesting because I think we like the idea of truth, but we also, it's like, it reminds me of the C.S. Lewis quote, which is not about truth, it's about forgiveness. It's like everyone likes the idea of forgiveness until there's something to forgive. And so I think it's the same thing for truth. I think we like the idea of being, knowing the truth, and yet sometimes when the truth stings, we want to deny it. And not recognize it.
Yes. You want to read the quote that she said about truth?
She says, the truth doesn't change due to your ability to stomach it.
That hits deep. The truth doesn't change due to your ability to stomach it. Man, I was just thinking about this the other day, and I was going through, like, a whole, like, thought process and conversation in my head of how I would have this conversation, of this idea of, like, my truth and, like, speak your truth. And I get what people are getting at when they say that, but I think truth is the wrong word. I think in that case the word has to be perspective, because when people are saying my truth, I think what they really mean is my perspective, that everyone has their own perspective on the world, and that informs how they operate and how they see the world. They have their own experience and they have their own way they react to it. But truth stays constant, right?
Yeah.
Like if I pick up this notebook and I let it go, it's going to drop.
Yeah.
That's the truth, because that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Now, how you interpret that might be different. I might say, well, that's gravity, and someone else might say, well, that's magic, you know?
Yeah.
And there's different perspectives and thoughts on that.
Right.
But that doesn't change the truth that every time I drop something, it's going to fall
Yeah.
because of gravity. And when I hear this conversation of like, you know, speak your truth, everyone has their own truth, I think it really undermines the fact that there is actual truth. And like that it's a choice to avoid it and to say I don't believe that. Like even if the truth is that gravity exists, someone could still say I don't believe that.
Right.
Like that's one side, but saying it as like my truth is that things won't fall, my truth is that these things don't exist. That's kind of breaking the definition of what truth, what fact is that this is a constant reality, and how you react to it might differ.
Right.
And again, really impressed that they put this line in it of like, the truth is the truth, whether you like it or not, and stomach it or not.
Yeah.
And that is the tension point like we stand in as Christ followers of standing in truth. Regardless of how others will respond to it or take it.
Yeah, I mean, perspective can be wrong, but truth cannot be wrong. And so I think it's dangerous when people are saying, your truth, my truth, because now it's all relative.
Right.
And if everything's relative, then nothing matters.
Right.
Because one person could say my truth is doing this really horrible thing, and some person could be like, well, that's wrong, but now you can't say that because it's their truth, right? If there is no universal truth, then you can't say that it's wrong, right?
Right.
It's just wrong in your perspective.
Right. We get to it with a certain point of some things, but then it's like, okay, well, this person's truth is that he likes to kill people, or this person's truth is he's attracted to children. And it's like, well, if that's the truth for him, then like who are we to say that's wrong
for him,
if that's their truth? But we're very picky and choosy about where we set our lines. When in reality there is a truth, and we just don't like to face the fact that there are things about it that we don't want to look at.
Right,
all
because
the time.
I think even the priest says is like, change is bloody painful. Because change, or is it grace is bloody painful because it means you have to change? Or something like that. It was something like that. And it's true. It's like we don't want to change. We want to stay in our comfortable bubbles, and we don't want to change. If we like this, we're going to like it, right? And so God calls us, God loves us. I love this quote. God loves us so much that he meets us where we are, but he loves us too much to keep us there. And it's true. We're constantly changing. And even if you don't believe in God, you're also changing because the world is messed up and there is a universal truth that affects you. And the key is, are you going to let it in or not, right? She says, to the publisher, are you going to publish an unconventional novel? That's the true question. I'm going to write it no matter what, And so it's the same to you. Are you going to actually follow the truth or not?
Yeah, and going into that, going back into like our creativity discussion and talking about like her novels, the movie opens up with this quote that like fiction is a plunge into reality, not an escape from it, which I also hear a lot. I go to the movies to escape.
Or I go into a good book to escape.
To escape my reality. And I feel like there is an element of that, but also Maya Hawke was talking at this Q&A after, and she said something that I like put in my notes. It really stuck with me, is that somehow fiction allows us to reach a place that is somehow truer than reality. And what she was getting at is that, like, it's very hard for me to describe to you how I feel when I'm in love with someone. Like, I can try to give you a picture of it. I can try to give you the words that's like, this is how I feel. But somehow a truer version of that is me putting a fictional story where two characters fall in love. And that gives you somehow a clearer vision of how I'm feeling than the actual reality of it, which I find so interesting. And I always pull back to Jesus' parables, but like through his storytelling, you know, he's telling these stories that, you know, are made up, right? When he's talking to people. And yet somehow he is reaching a truth that is deeper than if he were to just explain it to them. Because, you know, he's trying to reveal things, he's trying to conceal things. But he's hitting at the heart of someone, and that's what we do through storytelling. What we want to do through storytelling is hit at someone's heart. Keep saying hit, it's very aggressive. But like reach someone's heart and somehow give them a truer vision of reality through a piece of fiction.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very cool.
Yeah, and again, it's like you said earlier, what we're trying to do with this podcast is to reveal that in the fiction that we watch, no matter how secular it is, right? And so, yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. Without further ado, let's go into our bonus features.
I love it. So much of just our notes in this movie were the quotes from it. At one point she says, she's praying and she says, "Dear God, I am so discouraged by my work. I want to do this for good and for bad. I try to turn the other cheek, but my tongue is always in it." Which I relate to heavily.
Yeah. That's a good one. This one is about when she figures out she has lupus and she realizes that she's going to die, like the reality of death. She says, and this is all like kind of paraphrased, but the reality of the power of God has awoken me from complacency, like a bullet in the side. So it's like, it's a bullet in the side. You're not dead, but you're like, wow, I'm going to die soon.
Yeah. It somehow gets you closer to God.
It also gets, yes, absolutely. And what makes her writing much more powerful in that way.
Yeah, there's a line in here from her past love interest, Cal, where he talks about imagination and reality like we were just talking about. And he says, if imagination impacts reality, is faith where those bridges meet? Which is not something I'm going to explain. I think it's just good to like think about and simmer and like what does that mean?
What could that mean? This is one where she's kind of crying out as well, where she says, I don't know him, meaning God, because I'm in the way. I long for grace. Faith rises and falls in me, but that can be the way that faith is deepened. Yeah, that's a good one too.
So good. She says at one point, creativity is nature manifest in us, and writing is dead without God. Whew, it's crazy. She also says, Lord, rise up in me. She talks about the cost of religion, and you can't love Jesus if you don't talk to him. And again, just her rawness of saying, my faith rises and falls in me, which I totally feel of like, we have these moments where we feel super faithful, and then these moments where it's like, am I even a Christian?
Yeah,
you know?
Those moments of like, I just don't even like feel it, you know, or I'm not, you know, I'm messing up these lately. And so it's like, am I just out of your grace? And this is the moment, I mean, this is what the priest was saying, which I was kind of messing up earlier, but grace changes us, and change is bloody painful because grace cuts like a sword, right? Jesus came to bring a sword.
Yes, and joy is sorrow overcome. She says, God, you've put a desire in us to cry out, make us want.
Make us want.
Make us want.
Yeah.
Really great stuff. I'm just assuming mostly from her prayer journals and writing. I don't know how much is added, if any, but kudos.
Kudos.
I got a lot out of it. And it just makes me want to read more of her writing.
Yeah.
But without further ado, the heart of the story. Carlos,
yes,
where are we landing with this story? We've talked about creativity. We've talked about tragedy. Where does this all kind of culminate?
Grace meets us in our suffering, and because of that suffering and because of the grace that God gives us, He is able to work further in us to create something special and to live special, right? I think we talked about the ending of the story being impactful because her mom, says how nice of a view you have, right? And then she decides to move all her furniture so that she's not looking in the view, which is still something I'm confused about. I don't know if it's something she did in spite of her mom or to be like, maybe that's what's distracting me or that's what is in my way instead of just focus.
Yeah, I think based on where it ends and her dialogue at the end, where she kind of talks about, for years I thought that the only way for my writing to thrive was to be away from home. That's the only way I thought of it. And she was like, she admits, she says, I realized that disillusion would have haunted me and would have really crippled me. I think her moving her desk away from the window, and I think also her mom pointing that out was almost like, well, at least, despite you're in this situation, at least you have a view of what's out and what could be. Yeah. And I think it was her coming to terms with what could be is right in here and right in my writing, and it truly is a moment where she is saying I'm no longer looking out to God, I hope I get out there one day. I'm complacent knowing that you've put me here. And we see that the majority of her works that we have today, the majority of why they've made a movie about her was accomplished in that little over a decade that she was trapped at home. Although I don't know if she would say trapped after a certain point, because he was able to put something in a perspective in her work that she would not have gotten if she had lived a healthy life in New York City.
Yeah, which she admits at the end, right? She's like, now I can produce all these things.
The very last line is, all that rises will converge, something like that.
Yeah, all that rises must converge.
Must converge. Yeah.
And we see the peacock feathers kind of come into view, so it's like she's growing. She's sprouted.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do we take that away in our own lives? That's the real question of what areas is God calling us to, or basically has God put us in that we need to submit and trust Him with, and trust that He's going to do a greater work through. Because her plan wasn't to be, bedlocked at her home in Georgia the rest of her life,
right?
And yet that's what she got.
Yeah.
And it's is that God's punishment to her?
Sure.
Or what?
Yeah. I mean, I think it causes us to change our perspective of when things happen to us, and like you said, is this a consequence now? Is this a punishment, or is this now a greater way for grace to work through me, in me and through me? And Paul says in our weakness, He is our strength. What is it? He says, when I am weak, then I am strong, right? Yeah. So I will boast in my weakness.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the message of Christ is always backwards to what the world offers. And I think, maybe in part, if she had stayed in that more worldly setting, I wonder if her stories would have been more secular. I wonder if she would have been influenced more. I mean, she seemed to have a pretty deep conviction, but you never know.
Or not even more secular, but just she may have began to conform to the critiques of others of saying, well, this isn't working out here. My writing, my style of writing, and so maybe I need to write the more conventional, digestible novel, which may have helped her in the short run, but not made her stick out.
Sure.
In the long run, and that would have been the non-truthful to God. She was concerned the whole time. Are my stories scandalous? Are they actually honoring to God? The scandalous or the heartbreaking thing would have been for her to give up on that and go a route that was easier. And it's not like she had that option necessarily, but she also chose in the end not to constantly live looking out the window,
right?
But to sit in where God's put her. And I think that's where we come in, is there is room for disappointment, and there is room for, God, what are you doing? But then at some point, there is a shift where it's like, well, God, you've put me here for I don't know how long. Like, I don't know if I'm going to die in a year or 20 years. All I know is you've put me here right now, and all I can do is give you my best. Mm-hmm. And like the priest said, write truthfully, write with a clear conscience, just write and let God take care of the rest. Mm-hmm. She did, and you know what? Her work impacts us today.
Yeah, heck, the Arnold Hall, which I'm not going to today, but I have one of the classes there. There's like a theme of like the women who've been impactful, and one of them is
Women
named
of Savannah.
Women of Savannah, and one of them is Flannery O'Connor. She's there, and her plaque and her little like head portrait.
Yeah,
yeah. So she definitely made an impact, even in a secular society, and apparently to Ethan and Maya Hawke. So.
Yeah, there's a story there. Like, I'm so curious what like speaks to these two, and what they got out of the experience of filming this. Like, I didn't get to ask a question, but the question I really wanted to ask them was something along the lines of like, how has like a story just interwoven with faith like impacted you, and how do you approach that from a truth, a perspective that is apart from that, you know? Yeah, but very curious of that. This movie was a delight.
Yes,
I'm so thankful for it.
It was. And that's Wildcat.
Without further ado, let's wrap it up. Carlos Grace.
Yeah,
we've done a number of movies now on this podcast. We're coming up on a year.
Wow.
Which is wild. Wildcat.
What
film are we tackling next?
So, this is a big one for us, but just a big one in general. Easter's coming up, and we thought we would do The Passion of the Christ by Mel Gibson. And it's going to be an interesting one because it's very dark, it's brutal, but again, like Flannery O'Connor's work, it's also necessary. And it's also beautiful in its own way, and it highlights truth. Yeah. Even if it doesn't make you feel fuzzy.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what God does through it. This will be the first story we look in that is, replicating the Bible directly.
That's true.
I believe so. And Easter's coming up. Sunday's coming.
Yeah.
So let's just pray over that and
pray for us.
Pray
too.
over you.
And Isaac, would you do the honors?
Without further ado. Lord, thank you for this day, for this time that we just get to praise you, glorify you, and talk about you. I'm beyond thankful for that, and beyond thankful for Flannery and for her work and how you worked through her and worked through her suffering to also glorify you. And Lord, in everything we do, we ask that you would just make us your typewriter, make us the medium which you work through, and may we just give you our best and trust that you will do the rest with it, trusting where you've placed us in all things. We pray over our viewers. We thank you for them, and ask that you would bless them, and that these conversations are life-giving to them. And then, of course, praying over next episode also, that as we live in anticipation for Easter, that we just would continue to keep our eyes and hearts fixed towards you. We love you, Lord, and it's in your Son's beautiful name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Beautiful. Amen, brother.